And welcome to the hot Bizfluent Podcast, where we get all up in your business. So let's talk. Today's guests are brought to you by Crush City Realty Group, your premier Houston real estate experts, and luxury real estate agent Alyssa Emmons, where everything she touches turns to sold. And finally, Covo Capital, fast, flexible financing for all your commercial lending needs. This podcast is for informational purposes only. The views expressed in this podcast may not be those of the Bizfluent Podcast or management. Don't forget to stay to the end to find out how to get some of our amazing merch. Now let's get down to business.
One day we are going to have some really awesome merch. We're also going to fix that video.
Hey, if someone pays us money, we'll make merch right now.
So, and we'll also have it fixed so that we don't keep on saying Alyssa's name. I bet everybody's like, I thought you said you weren't doing that podcast. Why does the intro keep on saying your name? Like,
we will have that done. We will have that done next week. That's for sure.
Yeah. So we dropped off last week, dude. So last week we did a new year, new you, new startup, kind of trying to talk about starting up, getting a new business up and running, what it takes, where you need to be, what do you need to know, what kind of loans can we go after, what's the difference and different stuff. And we kind of ended last week on, hey, you need to have experience and or at least a college education, one of those two. But in a bank's eyes, especially the SBA, correct me if I'm wrong, but experience is far more important than a degree.
Yeah, I mean, as the saying goes, not preparing will fail. How does the saying go? I literally ran through my head before I started, and then I'm like, how does it go?
If you don't prepare, then you've prepared to fail.
That's right. So, it was funny because I think the intent was to do this in one show.
Or failing to prepare. Yeah, the other one is failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Correct. Which we sort of did because we didn't really prepare too much on this, just going into it freestyle. But so now we're doing probably about three episodes on this. But the good part is we're going to go into depth on stuff. So I'm glad, we went a little more into depth on experience, whether that be through your schooling, whether that be through working in the industries, any of those things. I think people forget that part. So I'm glad that we kind of went off topic per se and went backwards and touched on that topic, because
I think that's one of the things, if anything, something that, like, I'm all scratching a little spot on my screen and forgot my camera's on it. So earthquake in Houston. So anyhow,
scratch that spray paint off.
All right. So one of the things that I think though is important though is business is fluid. It was something that when, you've been in business for a long time, you've been in business working for other people, you've been in business for yourself, you've owned a couple of different types of businesses. But like every time you move forward, you go, business is fluid. And honestly, so is this podcast. So honestly, to me, it's very fitting. You move as things move.
And sometimes things just happen, it's weird how things fall in your lap. I spent all this time in high school and college sort of preparing. I mean, it's like the question when you're 5, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, you may have an idea based on some very naive perceptions of things. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a fireman. I want to be a police person. And you may hold on to those dreams as you progress. But you're right. You have to be fluid. And I never thought I was going to own a tree and landscaping company. And I had a major tree and landscaping company. Weird coincidences led me that way. I never thought I would sell furniture when I got older. That was one of my stops. I never thought I'd be a business partner and manager of a bar out in Odessa. I didn't realize that was going to be the steps on my career, but it happened and it led to other things. Right. So yeah, we say prepare, but within reason,
Well, so it's not that you shouldn't prepare. Like anytime you've ever dealt with your startup, anytime you've ever gone and bought another business, like when you did this last bar business over in LaGrange, right? The last bar that you owned in LaGrange, you were very prepared. You and I went through everything. We really went heavily into detail over the documents. And guys, by the way, that's another reason why you should have contacts in all different types of fields, because and by the way, this is also one of the reasons why when you have contacts that are experts, even though you get this feeling you're right, you should probably listen. You should probably listen to the people who are experts and worried for you.
Yeah, at least take into consideration to those things so that you can protect yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end of this, you know, the rules that were negated were negated. Well, let's take this. For one, when we went into it, we were successful based on basic math. The business was a 10 to 12,000 revenue a month property. We made it a $33,000 to $50,000 revenue property. But the things that you have to consider are, you know, JP went thoroughly through the rental contract, the lease agreement with me, because this was an operational ownership. I, you know, run venues before. This is a very similar size, very similar property. I knew the operational owners, both of them, actually, before I got into this for a decent amount of time, and had done other deals with them. So I thought I felt confident in that as well. What I felt a little leery on was the lease, the area that it was in based on the lease. Just so you know, it was a 9,000 square foot bar restaurant venue. Everything was in it, $4,500. What was not considered was some of the intangibles of the partnership, at least with one of the partners, and two, the area based on the numbers. And I probably should have researched that a little bit more. And the reason we're going through this is because we want you guys to not make the same mistakes. And even when you prepare to not make mistakes, even when it looks like a good deal, even when it may be a good deal, if you don't protect yourself on certain things, you know, you can get burned. And one of my big things was I had always said I would never lease to own. I would always buy and run the business as if I bought it.
Yeah.
And that I violated, and I got burned per se. So, but then you look at this, and this is something, you know, we don't touch a lot. Well, actually, we do kind of touch a lot on this because, and I need to make this statement too. So, capitalism is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it only works right when the right rules are applied, and that includes leadership being morally and I believe religiously attached to some sort of higher rules than yourself. And so, in this case, I did not pick a very moral partner. I had a lot of signs from one of them. I don't want to blast both of them. One of them is a really good guy, and still do business with him. The other guy
is a really good businessman.
And he's a snake, man. And when you get into that, this guy's a close to Fertitta. I wouldn't say he's a Fertitta, but he's a close to Fertitta in the amount of properties and stuff he has. But, you know, you need to think about that when you're getting into business, because you got to protect yourself even from those guys, especially if you start getting up into those higher end deals, you know, into the millions. You know, those guys up there are battling left and right all the time. It's very hard to find an ethical millionaire, billionaire in that realm in all aspects. So, and I'm not going to say that they're not good people per se, but business is a different story. So anyways, you know, I violated some rules. I didn't listen as close to JP on some things. I kind of was like, hey, I think we can still do this based on my confidence in doing it before. And I think we did prove that, but that we could do it. But you know, when a owner starts charging you money that's not in the lease contract, when they're not repairing the things that they need to, that can lead to other problems, when they're charging you for other bars that they own with things that you're paying for.
I think that's one of the things. Turn your speakers down just a hair.
How would I move this out?
No, your speakers.
Oh, my speakers, you can hear them?
Yeah.
There we go.
So that's much better. So one of the things though that you guys have to think about, and what Josh went through, is something that you just don't hear very often, and that's that he succeeded, and yet the business still failed. Now the business didn't shut down, but the business model was still a failing model because of poor partnership.
Yeah.
And so
when you don't own, it's a position hold.
Correct. And
it's a position hold. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'll let you do it since you're the one that went through it. But absolutely, there's a big difference between owning the business and owning through management, which is more or less what you did.
Yeah. You can. So if in the right circumstances, you can be successful. You can make money. But you're buying a position in a business when you're leasing. And so that ended up being the issue, is that the partners didn't want to apply to the same terms that we had agreed to. They were violating some other things. And then they were just doing sorry, not they, he was doing some dishonest things. So you have to look at it. Okay, I've invested this much money. I know that based on a 3-year contract with another 2-year extension, so that gave me a total of 5 years that I could own that business, or the rights to that business. Am I going to be able to get that return based on what we had done from that $10,000 to almost $55,000? We probably would have made a return in the second year, but I had to look at time. I make a very good amount of money doing commercial lending, which I had to sacrifice some of that time to do. And I was gone from friends, family, whatever, because it was 2.5 hours away to get to this location. Every Thursday we leave and every Sunday we get back. So I had to evaluate that return on my position, in that, okay, I can take a loss now and I'm not going to regain any money, but I also have to continue to exist in this business and continue to give my time and effort in this business to make it to that, to, another year, another 7 months, I would say, to be able to start getting that return. And if you looked at that, it wasn't worth it. And so that's why leasing businesses can be hard. You're buying a position, you're not buying a business. You're buying a position in that business. So just keep that was probably the biggest rule I violated, was I didn't think about that part as much, because I had confidence in what we did, and we did some awesome stuff. I mean,
no,
JP
you guys did.
you
guys did some amazing stuff,
and they haven't done anything like that since.
No, you brought some really big names out there that were really big for our region. You brought out midget wrestling. You brought out a bunch of stuff that really wasn't seen in LaGrange for a very long time. It's not that it's never happened. It just wasn't. It hadn't been for a good while, and so.
And that's a good thing to think of as an owner. If you're on the other side of this, is you also have to think about the person that you're giving this opportunity to. Are they spending money on your business? We probably put about $70,000 in the business, so we invested in that business.
Right.
Are they continuing to increase revenue? Like I said, they went from $10,000-$12,000 to $33,000 to $54,000. We averaged about 38 in the 7 months that we took over. And so if those things are viable, then you should be supporting your business owners, because, again, at the end of the day, you get the bigger return if you've got good people in place and they're growing that business. So what they have now, based on what the one partner did, now they have a business that's only been a restaurant. They're probably barely covering fees. They're always going to be shuffling through owner operators. And they're going to have gaps where they're paying the stuff as well. And because it's now a restaurant, with the expense of building because they did build out a quote unquote arena venue next door to it, they're never going to recoup the costs on that. So it was a dumb play by myself, and it was a dumb play by the owner, the one partner. So
the difference between them and you is both of your partners on that side have almost an indisposable amount of cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have that same indisposable type kind of cash.
Yep. I had a cutoff point where I said, I got to cut my losses, because, again, we didn't run out of money, but just.
But you didn't see an end of spending money. That was your problem. You didn't see an end of spending money.
We were considerably slowing down on the spending side.
Yeah.
I think we probably would have been fine, but it was just a matter of that money already being spent, the unethical things we believe were going on, and then
correct.
Knowing that to get to where we were getting return, we still had another 7 months, and then at 2 years, if I invest $75,000 plus all the time that I'm not getting paid, so you got to add that into it too. There's no salaries, there's no income. Then is 2 years worth of return going to be worth it? Probably not. So we just
or just are you willing to wait? That's the other thing is are you willing to wait? And so, like we talked about in the last episode, we really talked about that a lot of this stuff that you're investing is not investing. You can't think of it as anything other than deferred gratification. And if the gratification that you feel like you're going to achieve isn't worth the deferral, then you don't do it. You don't move forward. Or if it seems like, I think one of the things that you'll find, especially when you talk to really bad poker players, not great poker players, really bad poker players, is they get to a point where they're about to be pulling the river, and they're like, "Well, I've gotten this far, and I've already paid so much money."
They're
Yeah,
chasing.
I'm chasing that flush, and I'm hoping that one more card comes up that gives me that flush I need, and then I can win. Look, if you're going to start a business, people, I'm telling you right now, there's a reason why the SBA wants to see all the businesses' numbers and all that stuff, because they don't want to see a chase. They don't want you to have the experience because it might look good on your resume. They want to see that stuff because they don't chase. They're taking a risk on you and your abilities, and they're hoping that you have learned enough through your experience. But if that business isn't already making money, isn't already cash flowing, they ain't chasing. And you need to stop acting like you're going to win eventually. You will win eventually. And some of your ideas are going to fail, but you are going to fail in life if you don't learn when to just stop, shut down, get out of it, pull out as fast as you can, reserve and recoup as much of your money as you can. And if you got to go drive for Uber Eats, sometimes you got to go drive for Uber Eats, and you move forward. Robert Kiyosaki and his wife lived in their car for over a year, taking showers at friends' houses. And now he's a household name. He went from being a multimillionaire from the Velcro shoe. It was the shoe wallet from the 80s, where he made a wallet in-house in the United States that went on your shoe, to China finding it, stealing the patent, making it for pennies on the dollar compared to what he could, and he lost everything. And he lived in his car for a year, still worked, still did whatever he had to do, to then turn around and reinvest every penny he had, and now he owns like 15 or 20% of Maui. It's crazy. Failing forward. You have to fail forward, but in order to fail forward, you have to also know when to pull out.
Yep.
Maybe better terminology. Maybe
My brain is too immature today.
I mean, today.
There's a lot of symbolism in both of those. So the lesson still is the same. So anyways, okay. So we've talked about
never too late.
We talked,
never too
and just
late.
to finalize on what he was saying too is, the reason they're so specific on that is because it's not just about even being able to control the normal. It's being able to control the intangibles that happen. Just like I'm talking about here. I had the experience. I knew the partners. I understood the vendors out there. I literally didn't even have to worry about any of this stuff already being there other than to repair and fix it all. I knew I had employees. Everything that was normal in a business, restaurant, bar, we knew and did right. But it was the intangibles of, not all of a sudden the partner not being as applicable to the deal as what he said. All those intangibles. So that's why they're, even when you know everything on it, you can still fail, especially in riskier businesses. So I think we've killed the cat on that, as far as like making sure that you've got the experience. How about we move on into?
Well, so we talked about we still went through a few things. So one of the other things we talked about, and we didn't bring it up specifically as properties. We wanted to bring up, hey, what do you look for in a property? So in a property, it just really depends on what your business model is going to be. And so last week we talked about, hey, you need to kind of really have some experience in a specific industry. You need to be looking for something. You don't want to be learning while you're building a business. You're already going to be learning all the things that you never knew. And there's going to be so much more than you ever imagined.
You're always going to learn more.
Yep. But you don't want to be trying to learn a trade while you're learning a business. You need to know the trade.
Let's say you've done the work, you've got the education, you got the experience, you know the industry you want to be in, and let's, for shits and giggles, say that we want to open a well, let's not even say that yet. Let's say you got the experience, you kind of know where you want to fall. Now you're going to a JP, you're going to a commercial broker. What's that first conversation you're going to have look like if they don't know the property yet? They just kind of know where they want to fall. What's that conversation look like, JP?
So it starts off.
And we have a similar client that is in that.
Correct. And so the first thing is all of my clients is, well, what can I do to help? What is it that you need, that you think you need, so that we can actually dig deep enough and find out what you actually want? And so it started off, I've got a client that was really looking to more or less take over a family property. And the family property also had a business, but the business was pretty defunct. There were some very personal way. Yeah, there's some very personal reasons behind it and stuff. And it just wasn't a good buy for my client. And so we kind of talked about a few other things, and what it boiled down to is the business that was defunct wasn't going to be the business that was going to be put back into this shop anyway. And so we decided, you know what, if that's really the route you want to go, and I can't divulge all the details of this business by any stretch of the imagination, but if what you're wanting to open is this type of business, you don't need to buy that property. There's other properties out there. And if that's
and what would you say if you were going to tier them, kind of what property would be the top tier that you would want to look at for the easiest / most return? Obviously it's a risk reward in all of it. This
particular client is a different thing. So this guy is him and his wife, they own a general contracting company. And so for them, it doesn't make any sense for them to spend the money on, and he's also a musician. And so he knows how gigging works. He understands a lot of that stuff. So anyhow, it just doesn't make any sense for him to go and buy a building that's completely built out. It's smarter for him to spend less money up front and then build exactly what he wants to get it done and finished. And it's going to take a little bit more time to get that done, but he's going to get something else. So that's what we started looking for, was things that were real true value add type kind of properties. Like, hey, what kind of property are we looking for? Well, we want something that's big open space. Great. Okay. So we got the big open space down. And now the next thing is what can we handle? What can we deal with? Where do you think this property should appraise if we were to purchase it? And so you have to look at your just like if you're flipping houses, you got to know your ARV. And so your after renovation value, where about are we going to fall? And is this property going to fit that still? And we found one, and the answer is yes. And we should hear back hopefully today, if not tomorrow morning, on the property, and see whether they've accepted our offer or not.
And staying in that one too, one of the other things is I truly believe, and I think you can account for this too, JP, when you're looking for properties. You've got really two ways you can go when you're shopping for something. You've got the strip center box stores, and then you've got individual properties. And some businesses really will be more successful when there's a how do you say it? It's got kind of its own personality. If you get into a strip center, there's really not much personality. The box is the box of the box. You have to put a lot of time and effort into building that out. Now, that doesn't mean that strip centers aren't good for things. If you are
this particular guy, he did not need foot traffic. People are going to drive to his business.
Yes.
Period. And so when you start looking at shopping centers, and if he came to me and said, "Hey, JP, I really want to open a hair salon," unless he's a very, very well established beautician. There we go. Unless he's a very, very well established beautician. I mean, he might be. He doesn't have any hair, so maybe he works on others. So, if he's not a super established beautician, I would be like, you have to be in a big retail spot. I mean, and is it going to cost you more? Yeah, absolutely. But you have no foot traffic.
And
I'll
keep
use
in mind
another.
that's going to be lease versus, could be lease also, but lease generally versus own if you're finding another property.
Right.
Talk on that too. How would you look at the decision between lease and own outside of even just money wise? Because obviously, if you're going to lease, typically you are not wanting to divulge as much
It's
money.
Well, so here's the thing. Outright, period, no matter what. The thing is how much money do you have to spend? And can we make the deal work that fits with how much money you have to spend? If you're starting fresh, brand new, you're going to be lucky to get anything for under 25% down. So right now, you got to figure at a bare minimum of a remodel costing you $125 a foot. You're gonna, I don't care what kind of space that is, if it's a retail space or if it's your own personal space, you're gonna spend somewhere between $75 and $125 a foot. So just say $100 a foot. If you need 6,000 space or 6,000 square feet, well, that's $600,000 to reno the entire thing top to bottom, tear it down to studs and start all over, right? Like, and you look at that and you go, well, do you have the 25% down? And do you have the additional money to spend on that? And if the answer is no, then, you can turn around and say, well, I can go get you a lease at a retail center. As long as you can prove you make enough income to already to, float the note, they don't care. And then you could go in and most of the time, they're going to give you what we call TI dollars, which is tenant improvement. And you can get that anywhere from, I think I've seen anything from as low as $5 a foot all the way up to $45 or $55 a foot. And when you look at that, so that's what that is, and that's also depending on how you write your contract. It could be all paid out to you at once at the very end, or it could be broken down into phases. And so just keep numbers easy. If you're getting 1,000 square foot space, that's a retail space, and they're going to give you $5 a foot, well, they're going to give you $5,000 for renovation. Well, for 1,000 square foot space, you should be able to paint the walls and do the floors with something that's going to be somewhere in the realm of $6,000 or $7,000. But then by the time it's all said and done, you're going to get $5,000 of that back when you're done. But if you're a giant gym at 19,000 square feet, $5 a square foot could almost pay for your entire renovation, and those I've even gotten $10 or $15 a foot for gym renovations. And my clients had to come out of pocket up front, but it wasn't nearly as heavy as others.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, I mean, I hope everybody understands there's a lot that we won't even go into because there's just so many details on whether you should lease or own. I mean, obviously the priority is, do you have the money to do that? But you should also think, is your business successful in a strip center? Do you need the foot traffic? Is there foot traffic in that strip center? Does, just like you would just like you would appraise to buy a property, when you look at these leases, you also want to look at, okay, because where we live, there's actually
business. Well, so it's the type of business you have, right? So if you have a type of business that, like I said, if you're opening up a brand new salon, then you need all walks of life that you want coming in. But if it's salon where you're literally just working on women and you're surrounded by Bass Pro Shop and Guns R Us and stuff like that, you're gonna have a bunch of dudes, and those guys
are a barber.
Yeah, you better be a barber. But then again, like if you're trying to open a brand new salon and you're in between Belk's and Palais Royal or JC Penney, then, well, heck yeah, you're probably going to do pretty good. You're going to have a lot of women that are going shopping for men's clothing, because I don't buy my own clothes. I don't even know what fashion is. And so, like there's going to be a lot of women that go in and out of those stores. You're going to catch a lot of foot traffic and a lot of drive-by traffic.
The other thing I'd recommend along those lines too is, don't rush. If you are doing it because that's what you've picked out and you haven't thought about all these things or even a fraction of these things, there's no reason to rush into a lease or to buy a place. You want to make sure that you're ready to go into these things, because it's a commitment. If you buy a place, you're committed to that place for until you sell it. If you lease a place, you're typically in a 3 to 5 year lease. You're still committed, whether and let's say you're a restaurant. Most restaurants, if they're going to fail within the first 3 to 5 years. If you're in a 3-year contract and you fail in this first year or second year, by law, technically, you're still owning that last year of lease or the last 3 years of lease, depending on if you got a 3 or 5 year.
or
So keep that
7
in mind.
or
7,
8
yeah.
or 9, whatever it is. And if you've, so I never advise any of my clients, big, small, brand new, whatever. Everybody wants to try to do a 1-year lease because but you're not projecting any kind of stability over a 1-year lease. And you're barely projecting any stability in a 3-year lease. But if you're really worried about your business, you do a 3-year lease.
I think that's a safe number.
If you want to, if you're very strong and like you've been working at the same job and you're opening up this business and you know you can afford this is nothing, or if you're replacing an existing location and moving forward to a new location, don't be scared of 5. But even then, honestly, once you start getting into big spaces, once you break the like 8,000-9,000 square foot mark, I mean, you're not going to get anybody to lease you space for less than 7 years. And most of the time they do 10 years. They do 10-year leases straight up. So like my gym, we did 2 10-year leases, and we're going to be looking at doing another one probably later this year. And it's just one of those things where
you need to buy and build.
they want to buy and build, but right now, again, so here's another reason why before you go out, you've got to look at your loans. And so these people are investors on top of the fact that they own businesses. And so this isn't like their first rodeo. Number one, in the gyms that they've opened, they wanted to be in shopping centers that had really nice anchor stores. And so an anchor store is going to be your main store. So if you go to a Home Depot parking lot, most of the time these days, there's other stores besides the Home Depot, right? Specs Liquor, whatever it is. There's stuff that's going on beside it. And the reason it's called an anchor is because this one takes up the largest amount of space and it brings the most people. And as a retailer outside of that anchor store, I benefit from the foot traffic that they drive. And so there might be plenty of people that'll go, hey, I only want to go to Home Depot today. And they catch the eye and they're like, oh, hey, look, it's an Astros fan gear shop. One of these days I go stop over there. My buddy JP loves Astros gear. Cool. And they're going to go over there and eventually shop. But so just because they don't show up every day doesn't mean that they don't see it and it's not top of mind. So those big spaces though, they cost a lot of money, and you can't be scared of having to spend 3-5 years on those. And the other thing that's scary is when you get into those leases, everything that you need to run your business is called a trade fixture. And so, if you're a pizzeria and you open up a pizza shop, your oven is called a trades fixture. If you're a barber or you're a beautician, you open up a salon or a barber shop, then all of not your like scissors and stuff like that, like all your mirror stations, all the stations you need, the plumbing fixtures. If you have a washer and dryer that you need to wash all your towels and stuff like that, I can't think of the word for the machine that sanitizes everything. I can't think of the name of it now. Autoclave. Your autoclave, those are all considered trade fixtures. Well, in your lease, you are going to sign over the rights and ownership of all of those to the actual landlord, so that if you can't make it there, they lock you out. And all that stuff belongs to them. So it makes it easier for them to replace you faster. And when you take those things out, you are just hurting yourself. And so you need to really, really pay attention to your timeline. And if you can only do this for a month, you're either in the wrong business or you haven't saved enough, you haven't sacrificed enough, whatever it is. There's something that's happened that's not enough. If you can't afford to be a year in advance, you're in the wrong spot anyway.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we talked a lot about lease. Let's talk about owning. We kind of dabbed on it. So let's say you're in the situation to own everything. Your research has led you to believe that you need to own. You got the money to own. Let's talk about kind of what do you need to have to consider yourself able to buy?
So, I mean, the first thing I do is when I'm in the process of trying to qualify any of my clients, And I'll go back to my client that we're talking about is I've been dealing with these people for 4 years. I know that they're in business for themselves. I know how much money they pull in. We've talked about all kinds of things from their taxes to everything else that they're showing. So I know they have strong cash flow. And so those are going to be some questions I'm going to ask. They're not really my business. And so the first thing I do as an agent when somebody's called me is I say, hey, it looks really good. It looks really promising. I have another client that called me that's not cash poor, but she's definitely not cash rich. And she's very investment rich. And so it's one of those things where it's like, well, let's talk about these things. Let's weigh them out. And when it comes down to it, I turn around and I pick up the phone, say, hey, Josh, I got this lady that's going to be a great client, but you two need to kind of talk about what she wants to do with this and what her capabilities of doing are. And you move forward that route.
And let's talk on that just so I can plug myself too. But when I go, I do a lot of lunch and learns with commercial brokers. And one of the things I try and convey to them, because I'm not selling it. This is the truth. This is why you should use somebody like this. A broker in general, if you can trust them, is time and money at the end of the day. If you've got a client it also makes you become a resource, because let's say your client has a bank,
right,
and they've got good money and they're ready to go. Well, that's great if they've actually gone through that with the lender, with the bank, and actually run it through. The problem is if they waste all that time with that one bank and they get to the end and something pops up, they can only fit the bank's metrics. So therefore, they're done. They have to go find another bank or find a broker. And this is why I always tell people, as a broker, I don't care if you have a bank, run it through them, but also run it through a broker. And here's why. When that bank says no, for whatever reason, that just gives me more strength, because now we know what the red flag is, and I can put you in front of lenders that actually can mitigate that problem. And people need to understand, banks turn down 80% of the loans that they see. That means only 20% of what a bank sees go through. And
imagine, Hank, the way to look at this is everybody on the planet's played Tetris. There's not anybody on the planet that hasn't seen Tetris that's going to be watching this podcast anyway. And so a bank is like playing Tetris. They look for pieces that are going to fit in their little mold.
Gotta fit.
It's got to fit in that mold. Otherwise, they're going to make it unachievable, because they're not going to tell you we can't lend to your type of stuff, but they're going to make it so that it just doesn't make any sense. And if you haven't talked to a broker, then it's different. So now imagine playing Tetris, but instead of saying, okay, here's the puzzle, here's my one piece ominously dropping down, your broker then has a puzzle or has a full array of 100 pieces over here. He can go, oh yeah, this piece doesn't fit. And before that piece falls, he picks it up, takes it out, and puts in the piece, goes, yep, this one works. And then boop, oh, look at that. Sure enough, it works.
And the thing that throws a wrench into it as well is that people don't consider is, if you go to that bank, obviously you're working under the bank's metrics, but you're also working under an industry that's in flux right now. It's in a lot of change. So banks are turning over bankers left and right. What you know as a banker today is not the same as what a banker was even 6 to 8 years ago. And so you may go, if you have a new banker, and you should ask, what's your experience? How long have you been at this bank? Because if you've got a banker that's within 6 months and you're doing one of the harder loans, say a startup or something that's just very intricate, you're going to just have bump after bump after bump with that person. And typically you get what I call yes men now. Most bankers nowadays are yes bankers. And the problem is, at the end of the day, they work for the bank. They don't work for you. So when you go through all these things like, yeah, we can get through that. We can get through that. And then you get to that point and they actually qualify you and it goes to their underwriter. Well, the underwriter doesn't know you. The only way they know you is through that banker. If that banker doesn't do a good job because he's inexperienced or he hasn't experienced enough loans or whatever reason may be, that underwriter can turn you down in 2 seconds and you're done. And you've just wasted 30, 40, 50, 60 days. Who knows how much you've wasted. So the point to brokers, commercial brokers, and even individual clients is, this has now become an industry where brokers are very vital in the fact that, one, they know the types of banks. They know to look for senior bankers. There's a difference between a Wells Fargo and a credit union. There's a difference between a Wells Fargo and a Frost Bank. There's a difference between a Wells Fargo and a First Citizens Bank. And you don't necessarily know all that. You don't know the requirements. You don't know what they're going to put the weight on within your business. And a broker is worried about properties. And over time, they probably do learn a lot of this stuff. But for the most part, they want to focus on the property and if it's going to be a good property for you and if it fits what you're looking for. And then they'll know some of the supportive things. What you get the broker for is to actually underwrite the deal before you go to any of these lenders. And then you tie into the relationships that these brokers have gained so that.
Now, he said broker like 14 different times. So guys, there's a difference between a real estate broker.
Yes.
And a loan broker or a mortgage broker.
And I don't even like to say I'm a broker because we do so much more. So, but I'm just using it from a familiar term.
Correct.
And that was a good catch. A real estate broker versus a lending broker, two different things. What I'm talking about here is the lending broker, that you want to make sure that you're using somebody who's qualified that actually underwrites. And you would ask them, do you underwrite the deal before you send it off? If they say, I don't know what you're talking about, red flag, get the heck out of there. Don't even use them. Because what happens is
they don't know what underwriting is. And there's yeah.
Well, and if they don't underwrite at all, if they say, yes, we don't underwrite, that's a problem too. The problem with that is you start getting broker chains. And a lot of people don't understand what this is because they don't see this part. That what a broker chain is when you go to a broker, a lending broker, and that lending broker searches all their portfolio for people they know, and they all turn it down. So then they go, oh crap, I still got to find someone. I'm going to reach out to a bigger, more experienced broker. I get brokers calling me all the time. Here's the problem with that. Everyone wants their hand in the cookie jar. So if that broker hands it to me, one, they're really technically difficult to let their customer go, which is a disservice to the client. But two, they want to put points on the deal. So a deal that might cost you an origination fee, 2, 3, maybe in very slim circumstances, 4%. And I'm talking real estate. That deal could get up in the 5, 7 range real quick because of the fact that you've got a broker, and then the lender all putting origination fees on it. And that's just bad for the client. It's bad for the broker. Eventually they're going to get found out and they're not going to get as many clients. Perfect example is I had one of the banks I was a VP at previously. The banker was like, yeah, I just got this refi in, man, y'all are making some killer money. I'm like, what are you talking about? And we do make good money, but he really pushed the killer money. He goes, yeah, man, I got this refinance, real simple refinance. The lady's got 5 points on it. This is a $1.4 million deal at 5 points. Wow. That's insane. That is literally insane. That is to me, that's bordering on the lines of illegal. It's just not. Yeah. But you are seeing
so it's not illegal. It's not illegal, but
it's not illegal, but it's
definitely not very ethical.
It's dishonest. It's unethical. And you are seeing, because of that, and my company, because we do held to a lot of ethical standards that we're not required to, but we do it because we want long-term customers. They're starting to crack down. So you're starting to see a lot more licensing. California, I think the Dakotas started doing it. Texas is still pretty open, but we're actually going through the licensing, and we're all for it because it's going to weed out a lot. It's good and bad. We look really good with most now. When they create a standard, we'll look about the same, but we will have earned our reputation. So in my mind, we won't really have a problem, but it will get all those weedy, seedy. Oh, I remember I felt so bad for the client. I even almost called the client, and that would have been technically bad faith, but to me, the guy was bad faith. So if you work with a broker, and I'm not going to say it's never this situation, but typically you should not have any upfront fees. If you do, the only way that is ethical is if you have just a very difficult deal and the broker should be telling you, hey, based on your situation, it's not really likely that we're going to get this, or it's going to take a lot of time to find this type of lender. So it's got to be a very finite. If you're going in for a refinance and you know that your property's good, your credit's good, you got the cash to do it, all that stuff, and it's in a relatively regular industry, you should not be paying anything up front at all to any broker ever, ever, ever. Now, the other part of that is too, that gets dishonest is typically the range that people work on within brokers is 1% to 3%. Very rarely a 4, but again, it has to be. It's a true broker, lending broker, ethical lending broker is going to operate on the scale of work. If I got to do a lot of work, I'm going to charge you more points. If I don't have to do a lot of work, I'm going to not charge you that many points.
Right.
And then it also depends on the size of the contract. If you're talking 1 million and up, it's going to obviously be
smaller.
I would say now, most of the time, if you're around 2-3 million, you're going to be in that 2-3% still. But there's occasions where you'll be 1. If you're in the 300,000, 400,000, under $1 million, you're going to be 3 points easy every time, just because a broker's looking to make around 10 to 20K on a deal. Unless it's just, I've done $5.7 million deals and we were at 2 points. Now we saved the client hundreds of thousands of dollars. We could have even been at 3, but we earned the reputation. It was the first time with that client. Right. And now that's going to garner us a whole nother hotel at the offers 4 million, rehabs 3. So it's going to be a $7.5 million loan that we're going to get paid on. Nice. and we'll still probably do around 2 just points. Because it's a risky one. So 2 points I would say is pretty standard. But when you're in that 5 points, man, that lady was dishonest.
That's insane.
That's insane.
That's exactly what you should be looking at, right? So that's another thing. When it comes to your brokers, you have to look at it in both real estate brokers and
lending.
That guy, your lending broker,
the kooky guy.
When you start talking about commission, 3%. That's generally the number, 3%. And so you're not necessarily the one paying that 3%, but that's what your guy is getting paid, is usually somewhere between 2 and 3%. And it is dependent on how big the deal is. The bigger the deal, the smaller the points.
And keep in mind too, your real estate brokers, they got some expenses they got to pay too. They got to pay. Yeah. They got to pay a decent amount of things on their expenses. We don't have to pay. So that's one of my favorites. Oh my God. That's one of my favorites is like I told somebody the other day, like, oh, really? You're a realtor? And I said, yes, I'm a realtor. It's like, but I'm not a residential realtor. I'm just a realtor. And I do nothing but commercial. And they're like, oh, you're one of those guys, make all that money. And I was like, I spend a lot of money too.
Yeah. Well, he's like, okay, so I know it doesn't happen as often, but you get really big licks at the time. And I'm like, as in like $1,200. I've done some leases where I made $1,500 on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we all have those ancillary things that we can do that bring in some smaller dollars. Like, yeah, I do merchant services. I do equipment loans, can be kind of small. I do what else is there? Those are called that's like to feed the basic expenses.
It's not the mortar. It's not the bricks. It's the mortar. It fills in the gaps. And so for me, it's one of the things I try to tell people. I'm like, okay, so my dues before I walk out of the house on the first of the month is I already pay for all of my commercial dues is $815 a month. So I literally start off my month in the hole, $815. And I probably do that 3 to 5 times a month or 3 to 5 times a year with $0 coming in. And so, yeah, I spend, and then that's not including my cap that I pay my brokerage. I'm with KW Commercial. I can't say what my cap is online, but I can tell you that I pay more than $815 a month for my cap that I pay them on top of how much I pay to be a part of my commercial brokerage. And it comes with a lot of benefits. There's a lot of commercial brokers out there that don't have a lot of incentive to work for you. Man, you should start looking at these big name guys, and some of these guys barely take home 50% of the commission. So for easy numbers, and you guys are going to go, oh my God, that's a lot of money, but not really when you're doing a deal every 2 months or 3 months. So let's say a guy sells $1 million property. Well, he didn't have, a lot of those guys don't have monthly dues like I do. They don't have the high overhead that I have. Their broker pays all of it. And when their broker pays all of it, turn around and they broker instead takes 50% of their commission. So $1 million property, 3% commission rate, $30,000. But they only get 15,000 of that when it comes down to it. And if they only do one deal a month, that's $52,000 a year. That's not really that much money.
Yeah. I think people dream of the big dollars, and there are people that make some really good money, but
Sure.
that's over time. That's over building the relationships. I mean, it took me. So when I became a broker, the advantage I had was I was already a banker. So I had already had a lot of relationships within the industry. And so if I hadn't had that, it probably would have been a much harder situation to break into. But in fact, of all the hiring we're going to do this year, we're going to hire about 20 people this year. And they've got to be bankers. We've tried the other way. It's just the rate versus return, because you got to realize it takes a lot of injection into those people. Whereas if they're a banker already, they know the system, they know how to look at financials, they know all that stuff. So it's not a big deal. But definitely you need to look at red flags when you're choosing your partners. And if you're looking at property and you're looking at it specifically for a business, I would say you should have a broker, lending broker, and not just a bank. Keep your banks. I'm not saying get rid of your banks. I'm saying you should still have a lending broker and a real estate broker on your team. I would even go so far as to say you should also have a mentor. If you're going to open a restaurant, find some restaurants that are already open. Talk to them. Get them to be a mentor to you. As long as you're not in direct competition with them, dude, they're going to.
I think that's the thing that scares people. Like, so many people look at the people at the top tier, the top of their game, and go, oh, those people, they just want to do X, Y. They think that these people are at the top of their game and that they're like Scrooge McDuck. They don't want to help anybody out. The real truth of the matter is most of the time when people make it to the top of the game, what they've done is they've exhausted their resources on growth, and they're like, I don't need any more money. What I want to do is I want to more or less disciple people. I want to get people out there, and I'm tired of flying on my jet on my own. I want to have 5 friends to fly on my jet, or what if I want to fly on their jet? And of course they're all different people. So they find the people around them that are willing to work hard and bust their butt and figure it out and take some risk and toss the dice, but do it in a very educated way. And those are the type of people that'll lift you up. They will pick you up and drive you through it. And when you have a hard time, they're going to be there to support you. They're going to let you fall on your face, but they're going to let you, help dust you off and say, hey, this is how you should do that. And absolutely, a mentor is a big deal.
And even if you don't call them a mentor, even if you just become friends with them and it becomes a conversation, like when I took that operational ownership position, I actually got to know a lot of the restaurant owners. And I mean, I can't count how many times we helped them. They helped us. I remember we ran out of receipt paper, which is a pain in the butt because for whatever reason, it didn't come in. The order didn't come in. And all of a sudden, boom, all of our machines need receipt paper. Well, I was able to run over to the other restaurant and say, hey, man, we need some receipt paper. We need it bad. They had a ton, didn't even charge us for it. And it was a lifesaver. So just even little things like that can be a great opportunity to keep you successful, because there's going to be times where things happen that you can't control and you just need some help.
And now we're starting to dip into strategies. And like we said, this is going to be a 3-part series. And let me put it to you this way. 6 minutes ain't enough to talk about strategies. Not at all.
We may make this a four show series. Well, you know what? Hey, we're going to take as long as it takes in order to give you guys some good information, whether you're a startup, whether you have some experience. That's who we're speaking to here. And hopefully even the experienced ones learn something new, or say, yeah, I want to comment to that and say, that's really a big help. We'd love to get some more comments in our videos that we can get some substantiation. That's not the word. We can get some feedback
and validation.
And validation. That's what I meant to say.
Like we took a whopping 3 weeks off because we took 2 weeks and then we broke and then we had some issues. So we took 3 weeks off in the last 6 months, and And
we have busy lives. And again, JP's running for city council. So if you're in Seabrook, make sure you get out and vote.
As of tomorrow, I think I'm going to probably, I'll share my QR code for anybody that wants to actually donate. I should be able to. The only thing about donating, if you donate more than $50, you got to donate. You got to give me your first name, last name, and then your mailing address. It's kind of weird, but yeah. So it's the Texas laws, not my laws. I don't
pictures of your face, your name of your firstborn.
You don't need all that. You don't start requiring blood typing and genome tracking.
blood vial.
Yeah, until you start donating over $5,000. But my goal is only to raise $3,000. So I mean, only $3,000 is a lot, but it's also not a lot when we're talking about spending money in an election. So.
Yep.
That my yard signs alone are going to probably cost me right around $1,000. So, yeah, every bit of help, every dime helps. So, all right, we'll talk about me.
And there's a rate of return on that, folks, because if they get in, you're going to see much more business oriented, much more activities going on, much more investment into the community. Rather
anybody Southeast,
rather than just a new check. Hey, guess what? We're gonna do a $18 million police station, and it's going to cost you at least $90 extra a year individually, each one of y'all, plus other stuff. So just keep in mind, there's a return on that. If you guys do invest, and it's worth it. Now's the time. We need the right people in the city council.
Yeah, we're definitely looking. I've been really going through a lot of our city's properties, and we have a lot of vacant property that we own for no reason, like none. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah,
like I said, we there will be a return. And here's the thing: when the right people get in place, I'm not running for city council, but I'm going to support those people much better because they're going to listen to people like me. Whereas the people in city council now, they don't listen to anybody. Status quo is fine. Let the city manager do whatever they do, and it's fine. Well, it's not
professionals. Professionals. Yeah. You want people who actually listen to experts. Experts. That's what makes us.
Well, make sure you like, subscribe, share, follow, send us some money if you want. We need a Patreon. We need a Patreon account.
We should start a Patreon account.
We should. We need to get that ready for when we go to the sound only, sound. What would we call that? Audio podcast.
Audio.
Which is coming soon, guys. That will be coming. I think we're gonna do. I think we should do that before 60 episodes, just FYI. So, but that will be coming.
We just started 30. I think we're like 5 episodes or 4 episodes.
I'm down with that. I'm down with that.
We'll rip everything out, so it's all just nothing.
We're gonna sound so much sexier than we look.
Yeah, being able to get rid of my face will definitely help with my appearance. That's for sure.
They're gonna love it. They can imagine whoever they want. Just don't look at the videos. Anyways,
all right, guys, y'all have a blessed day. See y'all later next week. Peace.